The urban transformation that is occurring to enable these global information and services networks is not just about cities getting bigger. It is a reconfiguration of territory and basic organizational principles, from cultural and territorial borders to functional connectivity. Globalization creates a new form of space based around networks of exchange, and the physical form of that space is urban networks. This new geometry of urban networks, driven by a market logic, responsive primarily to global networks of exchange and operated by powerful private actors, creates a huge disjunction with local territory and existing governance structures. Cities still exist and operate within the national regulatory framework, which is designed according to the logic of its fixed territorial space, when increasingly our economy and society operate based upon global networks anchored in cities. These networks of information and services are increasingly bypassing the national territory altogether, creating a new kind of global and local space that exists in urban centers, one that requires a new organizational paradigm to structure and enable. Nowhere is this disjunction seen more clearly than in the major financial centers that are seen as the most strategic nodes in these global networks. Global cities are the landing points for the world's flow of capital and goods. As these networks have grown, the power of the corporations that operate them has likewise expanded greatly. The global city is the space where that power becomes materialized, a point where highly abstract flows of capital and information become something material and visible to all. Throughout history, urban centers have been the home of the dominant sources of power within society, with the buildings used to exhibit the power of those dominant actors, whether this was the church, government buildings, or the monuments of empires. But over the past decades, the centers of our iconic world cities has become the locus of corporate headquarters and financial centers. With the rise of economic globalization, the multinational corporations and financial institutions that manage and operate these networks become the dominant actors. This power is exhibited in the global city, which has come to be shaped to a great extent by these powerful actors according to their logic and to accommodate their needs. Financialization has changed the form of investment in urban development, with significant results for how urban networks have evolved over the past decades. The lines between private and public have blurred, while at the same time the logic of finance becomes more pervasive in the development of the urban space. Cities have become increasingly defined in terms of investment vehicles instead of shared living spaces. Huge amounts of capital are now flowing into the development of the primary urban centers from the global financial system. This financialization of real estate and urban centers has created a huge disjunction between the local needs of communities and those of these private actors. Where once urban development was driven by local incentives in response to the local needs of the place, with financialization, cities are becoming increasingly private spaces of investment that are primarily responsive to the logic of these flows of finance. The process of globalization engenders an evolving relationship between the local needs of people and the market logic of global networks. World cities are at the epicenter of this conflict. They are the frontier zone of globalization and the struggle for new systems of organization that would be relevant for an age of networks. In a time when existing governance structures are paralyzed by the complexity of the issues at hand, cities take pragmatic action because they have to. They are at the forefront of financialization and environmental changes. The effects of these changes impact them directly, and they are pushed to take action. In the absence of appropriate governance mechanisms, cities are becoming a new locus of action. But this is a very different form of governance than the one we are used to. It will be a governance structure that expresses the new forces at play of finance and corporate supply chains, of technology, and increasingly, internet platforms.